In the heart of a sun-drenched town where mango trees lined the roads and the laughter of children echoed until the streetlights flickered on, two souls became inseparable. James Okonkwo and Clara Adeyemi. He was the boy with the shy smile and a head full of stars. She was the girl with the fierce loyalty and a laugh that could shatter the quietest afternoon. They were partners in everything, building mudcake empires, sharing a single textbook in school, and nursing each other's scraped knees. Their bond was a quiet, unspoken promise. As they grew, the town whispered about them, assuming their friendship would one day blossom into love. But James and Clara knew their own truth. He was her anchor, she was his compass. Their love was a deep, foundational thing, not a fire, but a steady, life-giving sun. So, when James received a letter of acceptance for a vocational program in Germany, the news was a crack in their shared world. "It's just for a while," he'd said, holding her hands at the airport, his eyes shimmering. "I go, secure a greener pasture, and come back. We'll build something." Clara had smiled, her chin held high, hiding the ache in her chest. "Go," she'd said, tapping his chest. "But don't forget where home is." Germany was a world of grey skies and crisp, unfamiliar words. James, who had always been the quiet one, found the silence deafening. He missed the chaos of the market, the smell of jollof rice, and most of all, Clara's voice. Loneliness was a cold, heavy coat he couldn't shed. It was on a crowded bus, during his third month, that he met Lisa. She was elegant, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun and eyes that held the wisdom of her 60 years. She saw a young man struggling with a bus route map and, in flawless but accented English, simply said, "You look lost." Lisa was a retired literature professor, a widow who filled her days with poetry and long walks. She was everything James was not expecting: patient, word-weary, and profoundly kind. She became his guide, not just to the city's geography, but to its soul. They'd meet for coffee, and she'd explain the history of a building, he'd cook her Nigerian stew, and she'd marvel at the spices. The loneliness began to fade, replaced by a quiet admiration. What started as a mentorship, a salve for his homesickness, twisted into something he didn't have a name for. He was 28. She was 60. But when she laughed, he felt seen. With Lisa, he wasn't the struggling immigrant, he was just James. And slowly, terrified and confused, he fell in love. For 2 years, his phone calls with Clara became a performance. He'd tell her about his classes, the cold weather, and his new favorite bakery. But the words Lisa were locked behind a wall of shame. He knew Clara. She would be happy for him if he was happy, but this... He could already hear the stunned silence, the gentle probing questions he didn't have answers for. How could he explain that the woman who made his heart feel safe was 3 decades his senior? It was easier to say nothing. He convinced himself he was protecting their friendship, but deep down, he knew he was a coward. Meanwhile, Clara's life moved forward. She was a nurse now, dedicated and brilliant, healing others while a quiet part of her waited. She dated, but no one ever felt like home. James was the benchmark, the constant in her heart, though she never dared to examine what that truly meant. She just knew that when he finally came back, everything would be right again. The day James returned, Clara was a whirlwind of excitement. She'd decorated his family home with banners, invited a few close friends, and made his favorite dish. When his taxi pulled up, she ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. "You're back. Finally, you're back, you wanderer." He held her tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume, a mix of shea butter and vanilla. "I missed you," he mumbled into her hair. "Don't ever leave for that long again," she said, pulling back to look at him. Her smile faltered. He was looking over her shoulder, a nervous energy radiating from him. Then, she saw Lisa stepping out of the taxi, smoothing down her elegant blouse. The world tilted. Clara's arms dropped to her sides. The laughter of the friends behind her faded into a dull roar in her ears. James quickly made the introductions, his voice a frantic rush. Clara, this is Lisa. Lisa, this is Clara. She's my partner. Clara's smile was a fragile thing, a mask held together by willpower. She shook Lisa's hand, feeling the cool, smooth skin and seeing the gentle affection in the older woman's eyes as she looked at James. That was the moment the first heartbreak pierced her. It wasn't just that he had a partner, it was that he had hidden a whole life, a whole love, from her. The one person she trusted above all others had built a wall she never knew existed. Days passed in a blur of polite, agonizing dinners. Clara learned that Lisa was intelligent, kind, and genuinely loved James. It made it worse. She was forced to be happy, to play the role of the supportive best friend while a dull, throbbing pain settled in her chest. She realized, too late, that the steady sun of her love for James had been a fire all along. Then, the wedding planning began. James and Lisa decided to marry quickly, a small ceremony. Lisa, wanting to honor the bond she'd heard so much about, gently suggested to James, "She's your dearest friend. You should ask her to be your best man." When James asked her, Clara felt the knife twist. A hysterical laugh bubbled in her throat. "No," she said flatly. "No, James. I can't." "Please, Clara," he pleaded. "You're the most important person in my life. I need you there. Beside me." His words were a cruel irony. After a sleepless night, she agreed. She told herself it was the final act of her old life, a way to close the chapter with dignity. But each fitting, each planning session, chipped away at her resolve. The wedding was held in a luxurious hotel, all glass and gleaming lights. Clara stood at the altar in a stunning tailored suit, her face a mask of composure. Beside her stood their mutual friends, Lucas and Rebecca, who watched her with worried eyes. The music swelled. Lisa walked down the aisle, radiant and serene. James's eyes were wet with tears as he looked at her. The officiant began to speak, his voice a drone in Clara's ears. As he got to the vows, a wave of suffocating finality washed over her. I can't stand here." Without a word, she turned and walked away. Her heels were silent on the plush carpet as she slipped out a side door, her composure finally shattering. She didn't stop until she was in a taxi, heading for the airport, needing to put as much distance as possible between herself and the scene she'd just fled. Back at the altar, a confused murmur rippled through the crowd. The officiant paused. James looked around, his brow furrowed, until he saw Lucas give a grim shake of his head. Understanding dawned on him. The shame, the guilt, the years of secrets, it all came crashing down. The officiant asked, "James, do you take Lisa to be your lawfully wedded wife?" James looked at Lisa. He saw her patient, loving smile. But in his mind, he saw Clara's face as she walked away, the same face that had waved goodbye to him at the airport years ago. Tears streamed down his face. "I'm a coward," he whispered, his voice cracking. Then, louder, "I'm a coward. I've been afraid of what I truly want. I can't. Lisa, I can't marry you." A gasp went through the crowd. Lisa's face went pale. She clutched her chest, a small, pained sound escaping her lips before she collapsed. Pandemonium erupted. People rushed to Lisa, someone screamed for a doctor, and the beautiful ceremony dissolved into chaos. In the midst of the mess, Lucas, who had been watching Rebecca's calm, steady hands as she helped Lisa, turned to her. In that moment of clarity amidst the storm, he knew. "Rebecca," he said, his voice full of newfound certainty. "Will you marry me?" Stunned, she looked from Lisa to him and laughed, a tearful, incredulous laugh. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Clara returned to her apartment, the airport trip a failed escape. She had nowhere else to go. She went back to work at the hospital, but her mind was a fog. She administered medications, smiled at patients, but felt hollow. That evening, she curled up on her sofa, a romantic movie playing on the TV, a bowl of popcorn untouched beside her. The irony of the screen's happy ending made her lip tremble. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. James. She pressed the block button without a second thought. Across town, James stared at his own phone, the call failing. He was a wreck. He had ended things with a heartbroken Lisa, ensuring she was with family. Now, the only thing that mattered was Clara. He drove to the hospital, his mind racing. She wasn't there. They told her shift was over. Desperation gave him an idea. He found the head nurse on duty, a woman with a kind, no-nonsense face. He poured out his story, not the easy version, but the ugly, cowardly truth. He spoke of his fear, his mistake, and his love for Clara that he'd only just understood. The nurse's stern expression softened. She looked at the young man, seeing his raw, genuine regret. "You hurt our Clara," she said. "But she's been hurting for a while. If you're serious," she gathered the night staff, doctors on break, and even a few awake patients. A plan was hatched. Her brother was called. He was skeptical but agreed, seeing the desperation in James's eyes. At 2 a.m., Clara's phone rang again. It was her brother, Tom. His voice was thick with panic. "Clara, it's Mom. They rushed her to your hospital. She's asking for you. Please, come now." Her heart ceased. She threw on clothes, her mind blank with fear, and raced to the hospital. She burst through the main doors, running towards the emergency wing. "Ton. Where is she? Which room?" she called out, her voice echoing in the empty corridor. The corridor was dark, save for a single spotlight illuminating a large cardboard sign that stood in the middle of the hallway. Confused, she slowed her pace, her fear momentarily replaced by bewilderment. She stepped closer and began to read the handwritten words, "Clara, I have been a fool. A coward. I traveled thousands of miles looking for something I thought was missing, only to realize it was waiting for me here, all along. It was always you." As she read the last line, the lights flicked on. The corridor was lined with people, the nurses, the doctors, the patients in their gowns, and her brother, Tom, who gave her an apologetic but hopeful shrug. And at the end of the hallway, standing under a beam of light, was James. His eyes were red-rimmed, his clothes disheveled, and in his hands, he held another piece of cardboard. He began to walk towards her, his steps hesitant at first, then filled with purpose. He stopped a few feet away and lifted the sign. It read, "I choose you." Clara stared at the words. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, it all swirled inside her. But beneath it all, the steady sun that had always been there for him began to burn again. A sob escaped her lips, hot tears streaming down her face. She took a tentative step forward. Then another. James dropped the cardboard. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands coming up to cup her face. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything, a silent promise of forever, a vow written not on cardboard, but in the very fibers of his being. He pulled her to him, his hand sliding to the small of her back, and kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted of tears and relief, of years of friendship finally acknowledged, of a love that had finally found its name. Around them, the night staff, the patients, and her grinning brother burst into applause and joyful cheers. The sterile hospital corridor was no longer a place of healing, it was the beginning of a new story. The ties that had bound James and Clara since childhood had not been broken, only stretched. And now, they had snapped back, weaving them together, finally, where they had always belonged.